Welcome to Session 10, Dominion, Idolatry, and the Marketing of the Plantation System, Part 1.
How you doing today, Haley?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for our topic today.
Same. What are we talking about?
We're talking about George Santos, aren't we?
The whole time, just nothing but George
The
Santos.
whole time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So did you see this video put out by the Lincoln Project?
I did. Yeah.
My name's George Santos. I'm from New York City.
So let me tell you a quick story.
I put myself through college and got an MBA from NYU.
That he was a star on the Baruch volleyball team.
I didn't outright lie.
We lost 4 employees that were at Pulse nightclub.
My mom was a 9/11 survivor.
My grandparents survived the Holocaust.
I'm Jew-ish. I've lived an honest life.
Santos helped him raise $3,000 for his dying dog through his pet charity, but Osthoff says he never got the money, and his dog died 6 months later.
Nothing in life is free.
He defrauded a shop clerk out of $1,300 worth of clothing and shoes.
Oh my God, George Santos stole money. George Santos bought designer clothes. That's what I buy.
He once claimed to be one of the first people in the United States to be diagnosed with COVID-19.
Santos told supporters that he was a producer on the short-lived Broadway production Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark.
Did I embellish my resume? Yes, I did.
What'd you think about it?
It was really funny. I have an unreasonable fondness for George Santos right now. I'm not gonna lie, I'm really fond of him at the moment.
Oh, he's kind of a sympathetic character. I think it helps him that he doesn't have a deep voice. He's kind of a squeaky.
I don't know. He seems like a lot of fun, but he's been doing some weird stuff.
He has been. My favorite line from him is, "I'm Jewish," as in I'm Jew-ish.
Jewish.
Wow.
Not really how being Jewish works. You don't be Jewish.
Yeah. I've just been struck by, how did he get so far?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how did he get so far? It's amazing. It's amazing to me. And I think he's just, it seems like there's something that is good in him. Like he really wants to connect with people, but then he always just kind of one-ups the person he's talking with. Like his story has to be just more tragic. Like my mom died in 9/11, or some or more fun. Like he's having more fun than the next person.
Yeah. Or like he said, carbon capture technology that I helped create or something, which is like, it's so outlandish that you're almost like, who would lie about that?
Right.
Who would say that. Right. Unless it were true, it sort of defies belief. That's why I'm like unreasonably fond of him at the moment in a weird way.
So I think we felt like this was a great example of what plantation capitalism does to people.
Yeah.
Right. It really depends on people projecting images of themselves that are actually more fun than they really are. They're more freeing than they really are. They're more accomplished than they really are. Right. And how did we get here? Yeah.
I mean, is it idolatry? That's what we're thinking.
Idolatry. Yes. And a second one, which is the Protestant understanding of what it means to have dominion from Genesis. So both of these things are really important. and so here's the spiritual and theological backdrop behind what we're going to say. The reason why our society is tempted towards the George Santos-ification of everything is because of these two things, right? Dominion and idolatry.
Wow, that's extremely strange to put those two together. The George Santos-ification and dominion and idolatry. Please tell us more.
So idolatry works a little different now than it did in ancient times, right? So if if we were living 1,000 years ago, or thousands of years ago, and I would say, I'm worried about the weather, so Haley, you and your family come over to like where my house is, and we're going to worship this idol, and maybe we'll like sacrifice some grain or a goat or something, because there's like the god of weather, the god of rain, sun, and whatever, and we're going to pray for good crops.
Right.
So the driving force behind idolatry is control. Like we want to control, I don't know, the natural world, and get a good weather so we could get good crops. And I want your help in doing that. And so we could look at how the Bible talks about this. I mean, Isaiah makes fun of this thing. He says, why are you like carving wood, carving stone, bowing down to worship before it? Like, that just makes no sense. And then Paul in Romans 1 talks about cycles of control, that and what it does to our character, what it does to our relationships. And so, yeah, sure, the Bible has a critique for idolatry. I think the reason why we don't pay much attention to it today is because the dynamics have changed. And so today, if I want to exert some kind of control, I would, I don't know, set up a social media company and say, Haley, you and your family, why don't you come onto my platform, and you can project an image of yourself back to, I don't know, your friends, your family, your followers, people that you don't even know yet, and sell a version of yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then, by the way, I'll make some money from that. But we can partner together in it.
Yeah. When you say that, it makes me think about, back to my momentary fondness of George Santos, that he looks like someone who has been having quite a laugh about everything. Like he's joking, like, yeah, my insert fiction here of his choose your own adventure, and people are like, really? And he's like, yeah. And then they're like, that's incredible. And he's like, I know. And then it just kept going and going and going. But the propensity to listen to the image, to need to have an image, to need to have an idol is so strong that someone can say something that is just completely ridiculous. And everybody's like, wow, that's incredible. And so, of course, someone can get away with it because there are people buying what he's selling.
And there's a way that we want to believe that someone could do those things, right? Like, because here's the thing, in today's idol worship, in the idolatry system of the plantation capitalism, we get to inhabit the idol and then sell it back to other people to try to get them to follow in our footsteps or to pay their dues or whatever. So so going to a great college it's nice. We do learn things, but it's also this credentialing system that we inhabit, and then we project that image back to other people so that they believe certain things about us. So, it's a simple way to say, maybe I'm competent at this, but then it can also be reduced to, I have the image of competence that I'm wanting to sell back to you. I'm the image of being accomplished. And so that's what I mean by, I think today, we inhabit the idol, and we do a lot to get there. And so we want to believe that, I guess George Santos's story could be true because we want it to kind of be true for us.
Yeah. And I think that to some degree, Christians and people on the right are primed to believe good sounding stories without the discernment required.
And I think that has a lot to do with Genesis 1 and the Protestant view of dominion. What does it mean to have dominion?
Tell us about that.
Well, in the early church, having dominion was something that we share with, number one, with each other, and we share with God. Right. And so the original meaning of Genesis 1 was that. So the way God rules creation was with wisdom, kindness, love, and goodness. But Protestantism came about during a time where people wanted to colonize, where people wanted to seize natural resources. There was tension between the Christian world and the Muslim world, in at least in Europe and the Middle East. And so what developed was a view of Genesis 1 that I just need to have control over the natural world and convert nature into money. And the early church said, if you purchase someone from slavery, you're actually interfering with his or her ability to exercise dominion. So the idea was we're all supposed to exercise dominion. We're not supposed to view this in an individual sense. And there's a way to...
there's limitations to our dominion. You're not allowed to be in charge of other people.
Right. We're not, that's exactly it. We're not supposed to be like dominating other people, but that got lost in the Protestant tradition. And so what happened in the Protestant world, actually, it didn't happen in the Orthodox world. And there's this great book about how Protestant theology, capitalism, and the environmental crisis kind of got bound up together. But the author points out, like, actually, Orthodox Christian theology in the East wouldn't have led to this. And we'll get to that in part 2. But I think this sense of dominion becomes domination, and then domination over other people. We've talked about slavery in the series on plantation capitalism. But now that we're not like, well, we're not supposed to like control other people to that degree, we have to be more tricky about it.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
I think this sense of domination, we turn that impulse on ourselves and other people. Right. And I think that's a lot of what's behind what plantation capitalism sells to us. A sense of you could treat yourself as if you're plastic, shape yourself, right? Reinvent yourself, look how you want. And then you can get other people to follow you. You can be more influential with other people and all these things.
You could win friends and influence people.
Exactly.
Like the famous book.
So weren't you telling me about an article that you had read about marketing?
Yeah, this article is called Brandscapes of Control, Surveillance, Marketing, and the Co-Construction of Subjectivity and Space in Neoliberal Capitalism.
Oh my gosh.
I know, just the title is like my actual love language. So this article talks about, it says that marketing hinges on 2 things. And one is the malleability of the subject, and this is in quotes here, which replace the previous conceptions of bodies endowed by divine providence with an unchanging complexion. So instead of saying like God has given us bodies and it's not changing, they're like, oh, you can actually be molded and changed. Interesting.
You can shape. It's the George Santosification of.
Yeah, just change it. Who cares? And then the second is the invention of statistics and the idea of the average man. So who's average? It's that top of the bell curve. We gotta figure that one out. So that enables bodies to be managed in populations. So we can now, I mean, we got to have a hierarchy. We've got to have control. We've got to have domination. We've got to figure out where all the rest of those people are. I mean, this is me at the top, right? So I'm deciding where are the rest of the people. And we've got to manage groups of people because we can't control each of them. We have a problem. There's too many people. We got to divide them up. And so
oh man,
together, this means that groups of people can be molded according to the whims and work of the few who control the message.
Oh man, but I love statistics, but you're connecting statistics with surveillance, which makes me feel scared.
Yeah. So it does require surveillance. I mean, you can't. What are you going to do if you know what the average man is going to be doing? You have to. If you're afraid of them, then you got to figure out what it is they're doing, because you wouldn't want them coming to get you. So there's this
Or if I want to make some money off them, then I want to know what is the average person willing to buy for $10.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And so we have this concept of data valence, and that's capturing, storing, managing, mining, and manipulating data in order to code, categorize, and combine it with different classes of subjects across entire populations or spaces, both narrowly and broadly. So that's a lot. We're taking a lot of data and we're figuring out who is what, in what category they are, what populations they are, and we are going to use that data. And so this is sort of like the foundation of like customer relations management software. I mean, a lot of companies use this. If you buy a ticket to go see a show somewhere, they're going to send you a marketing email and be like, do you want to come to another show? Maybe you do. And that's really great. And I'm glad that companies do that because I want to see another show. But,
Right.
you know, it can be used for bad things too. Maybe it's for the anticipation of your purchase pattern.
Right.
Your profile that's in a database.
That's why Amazon says people who bought this book that you bought also bought these books.
Exactly.
Oh,
Right.
this is hurting me.
Well, it's helping me a little bit because I sort of like it when the internet does that to me a little bit. But you know, I get that it can hurt too. I mean, I'm of two minds about it. Sometimes I like the suggestions and sometimes I feel invaded. So I go back and forth on this one. Again, like my unreasonable fondness for George Santos is happening right now.
Linking those two things about images, statistics, and surveillance is really telling. I mean, there's this book that is on my shelf, and I've read a few summaries of it by Yanis Varoufakis called Techno-Feudalism: What Killed Capitalism. He argues that we've gone back to a feudal system where the massive landholders are data cloud owners, right? Like Amazon, Google, Microsoft. They own massive amounts of cloud space with data on it, about us. They know about us.
Yeah.
And so they are like the feudal plantation landlords who charge rent, and they collect rental income from, whoever wants that data.
Right.
So maybe like, health providers or insurance people who are trying to forecast like, what's Mako's health likely to be 40 years from now.
Yes. Yes.
And I think this is what made Andrew Yang's idea that we should own our own personal data so striking. Like, I hadn't thought about that, but now you're making me think about it.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Like people should own their own data about themselves. The information about you is a part of what makes who you are. That's the reality of you, accurate data of you. In regards to this, I was just chatting with my daughter this morning, talking about how we ought to have some sort of reality-based narrative of ourselves. And she was talking about how people present themselves as something that seems a little bit too shiny on the internet. And so we were talking about that. I'm like, yeah, I get that. And she was sort of upset that Christians were like, I have to like read my Bible in this particular way every single morning. And here are the markers and here's the coffee. And she was like, what, do they think that God doesn't love them if they do that? Do they think he's mean and he hates them? And I was like, well, it's a good question, isn't it? Is it an angry, vengeful God who they have to present themselves as, doing the right thing so he doesn't hurt them? And we discuss like, no, God's not that way. He loves us. We don't have to present some perfect image of ourselves. And it's sort of like if all of your friends were walking around saying, have you heard about this girl? Every time she comes up to me or anybody, she draws on your face with a Sharpie. And if you were like, I've never done that. And they're like, well, everyone's saying that you do. You could never live that down. That piece of data about yourself that is completely inaccurate somehow is like attached to you, but you can't get rid of it. So the messaging, the branding, the data needs to be accurate. And we need to have some measure of control over that.
Well, it makes me think of the Ark encounter. It's like Christian-owned theme park with Noah's Ark featured, but like Noah's Ark didn't look like that. It was a huge box, right? But instead, they make it look all like the Titanic, like really smooth and I don't know, sculpted and stuff.
It goes back to our article again, loving the title, Brandscapes of Control. The Ark encounter, and this could be applied to Disney This is a brandscape. It's not a landscape, it's a brandscape. And so you go into this place and you are immediately immersed in whatever the person decided that you would be immersed in. It is messaging, it's images, it's words, it's all of that. You're immersed in a brandscape. That's what the Ark encounter is.
Because somehow that reflects on us.
Right. Right. I mean, when you read the Bible, you have to have perfectly colored markers and you have to write them in a certain way and you have to journal them. And yeah, let's just make it look better than anybody could ever actually sustain.
Wait, you write in your Bible? I never.
No, that's what people do, though. Lots of people do that with like very specific colors.
So that when we open our Bible, people can see like, whoa, you noticed
how holy we are. Thank you very much.
How observant I am.
Then you fill it up, you get a new one, you write more. It's all about you. Just, add jots and tittles to God's word. Maybe that's too much.
Let's keep
just
that.
Little jot. No. Take someone out. It can be a B-roll. It can be an outtake. Just little jots.
But I think this also has to do with how after World War II, every country engaged in radio and TV portrayals of what that country was about, right? And kind of pulled back to its population. Like, well, this is what it means to be American. This is what it means to be French, English, Russian, and so every society kind of got inundated with images.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's TV now. So you can take a camera, you can put it in place, you can produce something that is curated, planned out. It's going to live in pretty much perpetuity, and people will be able to watch it for, decades, maybe centuries to come. And that's kind of cool. It's like a time capsule of what was going on, but it was a brandscape. If you think about that, there are a bunch of these videos that you can find on YouTube, and I think archive.org is where some of them are. And they're on the American side. It's just these 1950s videos of, I don't know, trying to help adolescents learn how to date or speak to somebody. And one of them was about personality and how to have a good personality.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Oh, no. Do you see what's happening to my face? Yes, it's fun. I'm saying yes, but like also it's kind of disgusting. And they're very shaming. They're very body shaming. They're very forcing a uniformity on people. Of course, it's all white people, obviously. Like you can only be white in these videos. And in the
well, let's play it. Let's play a clip of that. Bouncy music.
We often talk about personality. What do we mean?
Boy, has she got personality.
No, I wouldn't give him a job. He can do the work all right, but his personality wouldn't fit in here.
I think skip forward.
Oh, I don't know. I don't like her personality. Do you?
What do we mean when we talk about personality? What is your personality? It is the way you get on with other people around you and with your changing environment. You want certain things from other people and from environment. The way to go about getting those things reveals your personality. For example,
this fits totally with what we're saying.
How pleasant.
Inhabit the idolatry.
Never want so much to make a good impression on someone. What did you do? How effective was your personality? Did you ever feel alone, out of place, when you wanted very much to be part of the group? What did you do? How successful was your personality?
Oh, you're a bad person. You can't do things well.
Bill Woodruff here has something on his mind. He wants something. In fact, Bill has his heart set on something. How he goes about getting it and the kind of success he has will reveal his personality. Let's watch.
Mom, oh, Mom, you need to shout. I'm right here. Right up there, the car. Help me to the table, Bill. There.
But, Mom, I have to have the car for mine. Where are the keys?
Take my hand to this off, Bill.
But, Mom, the car.
I heard you. If you're going to insist on having an answer right now, I better say no.
But, Mom, you can't.
It's so warm, Bill. Your father and I may want to go for a drive this evening.
Bill isn't doing so well, is he? What went wrong? Let's see. Your personality is the way you affect other people. Think about that. The way you affect other people. Can Bill do better? Can he have a better effect
You
on
can
his
pause it here because this is where I have my comments. You can stop the share here.
Wow.
Your personality is the way you affect other people. Think about it. Your personality is the way you affect other people. It turns it into that your personality, and this is the marketing of the 1950s, right? Your whole personality, everything about you, which is, it's sort of saying like all of you, is how other people react to you. And it's leaving out a lot.
Yeah, like maybe other people are whacked.
Yeah, maybe there's something wrong with other people. Maybe it's not all about you. I mean, I like to call this sort of video and this sort of thinking as like the actual origin of generalized anxiety disorder, where you were so worried about how other people are going to treat you. And like, this was the marketing of the 1950s US government. I mean, it's even if it's not like a war propaganda movie or something, this is what people are watching and telling you, like, hey, the way that you are and the way that other people react to you is your whole personality. And so, of course, you will think there's something wrong with you. I ask you, what if it's the 1950s and you're not a white person and people are treating you badly? Is that because you have a bad personality? Maybe there's something wrong with all of society. This is individual responsibility and individualism gone crazy. It's not that. Sometimes you're in a system.
Wasn't that video about the mixed marriage, you know, like the Japanese white American couple?
Yeah.
Something that the US, that it was part of a story the US wanted to tell about itself.
I am Miwako. I was born in a little town of Oiso near Yokohama. In 1945, after the war had ended, I met an American soldier named Walter Lutz. We fell in love. Two years later, we married and left Japan for the United States. On the day our plane landed in Cleveland, Walter's hometown, I was nervous and worried about meeting his family. Walter's mother was friendly, but I wondered if she was wishing that Walter had married an American girl. The others were nice to me too. Something unpleasant happened to me that night. Walter's cousin telephoned, and Mrs. Lutz wanted me to introduce myself. English was hard for me then, especially on the telephone. And what I expected happened. I couldn't understand a word. I knew there was no reason to be upset, but I felt stupid and ashamed.
Making a brandscape. Yeah, we have this article here from theconversation.com, and it says, quote, Said shows, and we're talking about the book Orientalism by Edward Said. He shows how Orientalism writings and ideologies actively shape the world they describe and how they perpetuate views of Middle Eastern people, but we can think of all of the East at this point, as inferior, subservient, and in need of saving. As a result, these often racist or romanticized stereotypes create a worldview that justified Western colonialism and imperialism. So that woman who moved here from Japan, learned English, married a white man, went to live in Cleveland, Ohio, of all places, lived with this man, had this whole life. And like they, at the end, they showed their kids. And I really think this woman was like, had really come here and married a white man. I don't think she was acting.
Sure.
I mean, very few white Americans would be capable today of going to Japan and learning Japanese and living in a different culture. That's a big, big stretch. And instead, this concept of like America telling this story about itself, or the West telling the story about itself, the West as in contrast to the East, was saying that like, those are the other over there. We need to save them.
Well, and the U.S. was actually trying to control the Japanese economy to win Japan in part of the Cold War against the Soviet Union, right? Like that was even why the U.S. One of the reasons why the U.S. dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It was to send a signal to the Soviet Union, like, hey, we're willing to do this. So yeah, what the U.S. was doing abroad had everything to do with this commercial.
Yeah, it's like a very extended commercial video.
Right.
We can think of it that way.
Right. And maybe getting, the U.S. public still sympathetic, right, to that involvement in Japan as a culture, as a nation.
Yeah, I think we have to understand the marketing of this video. It's essentially, it's not just I really encourage everyone to watch it. It's not just an interesting educational historical video. It's a marketing framework. It's been pushed to the masses. It's not fair or accurately descriptive and just sort of like benignly educational. It's a grotesque parody, and it feels palatable enough for people who are uninformed. It's a division of humanity. It creates a hierarchy, and it allows the elites, remember, turn around and look at the projector from one of our previous videos, to rally masses to their cause.
And it allows white America to inhabit the idolatry, right? To inhabit in some limited way the power dynamic that the U.S. is exercising over Japan at the time. And to believe this image about itself.
Right. So people who are Orientalists, they often describe some parts of Southwest Asia, North Africa, essentially everything that's not the West, in ways that are meant to represent the whole Orient with all of the moral attitudes, all of the religions, all of the cultures, all the languages, all the political structures are just this massive other over there. That's an interpretation of a huge amount of humanity that is all very different, as though that entire landmass is one giant colonial project. Some of the result of this is like the Occident, which is the West, is propagandized into thinking that the Orient is this exotic mass that's just ripe for exploitation. And meanwhile, the Orient, the exoticized other, is propagandized into yearning after the stuff of the Occident. Beautiful, modern, shiny kitchens, fresh bottles of formula down in the global South that didn't really work out that well. You can think about a lot of the consumerism that has been exported out of the US, and just the whole world is doing a lot of consumerism now to the detriment of our environment. Everyone has been propagandized into the brandscape of consumerism now.
Well, and is part of the point that we export our waste products, our landfill, so that we don't have to see it. Like it doesn't trouble our image of ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think is that all part of the plantation system, right? Like, we want to see ourselves as clean, as not destructive, but that means we hide these realities from ourselves.
Yes.
What does that mean about what white America did to itself? Wartime propaganda. The government and companies learned that it works, right? It works to get people to do stuff, buy stuff, support stuff. buy government bonds to support the war effort, right? People will spend money the way you want them to if you give them the reason that they think is good. And so what does that mean about what white America did to itself? Like, what image did an idol did the elites ask the rest of white America to inhabit? What idolatry? There was this video put out by Vice News called Golf, Booze, and Guns Inside Boomer Paradise. And it's about that retirement community in Florida called The Village, or is it The Villages?
The Villages.
Villages. And I think they were on the news somewhat during like the presidential elections. There were some tensions that came up, right, between the people about like, are they going to vote Republican or Democrat and stuff. But anyway, this clip that we're going to put into our video is really telling about the image that and the idol that they're calling these people, who are almost all white, very patriotic, the idol to inhabit as an image that gets reflected back to them. And so it exemplifies so many of the things that you described, Haley, about
Brandscape. The Brandscape.
Yes, they are selling a Brandscape.
When you talk to people in the villages and you talk to them about the developer, they talk about them as if they are these almost like charity that is trying to do the best for the retirees.
Right. They've got the retirees at heart. That's a common theme up there. They think of every little thing and they make it work. That's why they're so successful. Because there's that level of detail, there's that level of care that goes into this community, and that's what makes it so popular with all these older folks who come down from up north. This is a community that's, I don't know what percentage of white people it has, but there aren't people of any substantial number of people of color there, or minorities of any kind. These are folks who have, a very clear idea of society and what it should be, where their place is in it, and it matches perfectly with what the developers provide them.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. Well, welcome to our monthly meeting at Eisenhower. Well, this month is the NRA annual meeting.
There's so much in that.
Okay, so let's just call out the details, right? Like, what did we see? First of all, there's the acknowledgement that there's almost no people of color.
Yeah.
And the paintings, the portraits, the American flags, the Pledge of Allegiance, like, wow.
I think that was the start of an NRA meeting. That's what that clip was. It was like the beginning of NRA, and they were all saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, yeah, with the guns.
Maybe that makes more sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the person also said, this is a place where people up north who have a clear vision of exactly how life should be, what they want, they come down here.
Oh my goodness. That is, it's like the manicured lawn, but extending to everything is manicured.
Absolutely.
Down to what, the 1950s.
Yeah.
It's like you're living in that world. We like to tell ourselves, we being generally, Americans or maybe older white Americans in particular, like to tell ourselves the story of the 1950s over and over because, the US at that time only had maybe one enemy, right? Like the Soviet Union. It was nuclear war. So, we were either going to live or all die.
Right.
And the world was kind of simpler. We were, the dominant economic power. We just used the Marshall Plan to rebuild Western Europe and Japan. And so we felt really good. All our cars were being sold everywhere. We had no competition, plenty of manufacturing jobs. And people want to go back to that time as if we could turn back time for every other country.
Right.
How can we do that? It's just ridiculous. And so the illusion of, well, the free market will take care of it, because, well, in the 1950s, it felt like a free market, even though there was massive government subsidies. But people were led to believe that it's just happening because of their individual choices.
There's a part in this, I don't know if it'll show up, but they say that in like the town square or the village square or whatever it is, there are buildings that have plaques on them that are historical plaques to tell the history of the building. And the thing is, none of it is true. It's all made up. They made up history for each of these buildings so people could go there and read it and be like, look at the history of this. But it's as real as Disneyland.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. There's, oh gosh.
So it's manufactured for them to live in Disneyland.
Just feel good about boomer paradise.
Then we'll have our government back, and it'll be the first steps towards that.
I think there's another clip in this too. Do we want to watch that?
Oh yeah, let's play that.
Let's watch that.
This has something to do with like people's individual experience and like tailoring your individual appearance. I'm sorry, tailoring your individual appearance the way you want it.
Yeah.
We only get one body. Let Reinvent Me maintain it. Reinvent Me plastic surgery and aesthetics can help you with everything from facelifts, eyelid lifts to tummy tucks, double chin, and laser hair removal.
A timely assessment on where the market goes from here, also free. If you have $500,000 or more to invest, you can achieve your investment goals without becoming your own worst enemy. Call 1-800-388-5522.
When did it become okay for men to be lazier, softer, weaker? Get ageless male with ingredients that promote free testosterone, muscle.
Are looks important in the villages?
Definitely. Appearance is important. Absolutely. I remember putting my makeup on and saying, man, this getting tougher and tougher to look good, you know? So I got in touch with a plastic surgeon that has a good reputation, and I had a rather extensive job. And it was a tough surgery. It really was. It was very painful. I mean, I had drugs, but I mean, it was still very uncomfortable, very painful. It took, I would say, 4 months for me to actually feel good. I only went in for bags and my neck. And once he had me on the table, he did the upper lid, the lower lid, the bags, the bottom, the neck. Holy cow! I came out of there. I mean, I was like a mummy. It was really something. But I'm happy with it. I think he did a fine job, and I don't have to tell people how old I am, and I don't. So don't ask me.
Ooh, wow. Way to take a lot of money from old people.
It doesn't read to me like aging gracefully. It doesn't seem like that. It seems like, she said it herself, you have to look good. Appearance is important. And it is to some degree, but I think there's a limit. I've said before to other people in my life, there's a way that your house can be and your life can be so that things are clean, so that it's welcoming for people. And there's a way so that it's too dirty, so people are like, oh, should I come back later? And there's a way that things should be so that it's so clean that people are like, oh, is it okay if I sit here? Is it okay if I put my things down here? And this is sort of stepping over their line for me of like, maybe your concern about appearance, and it's not just the plastic surgery, it's the fake history and all of that. Maybe this isn't really hitting the high notes of what you really need as a human. Maybe this is a brandscape of control.
And again, tying it back to the Protestant approach to Genesis 1, where we feel, oh, just because there's this word dominion, that it means what we think it should mean. And not only should I be able to control my world like this, I control how my body appears, right? Like there is a deeply plantation capitalism approach to one's own appearance.
Right.
And
Right.
what you think you can manicure and curate around you. It's
Right.
just like, well, what happened to the early church sense of God wanted every person to share in the wise governing and stewarding of creation, which means that reality is not going to look the way I just want it or my tribe just wants it to look.
There's a fear under this, like I would hope that as you age and get wiser and you've learned more about life because you've lived longer than a lot of other people, that you don't need to surround yourself with artifacts of a time where you felt like your country was on top of all of the other countries, where you don't feel like you have to get plastic surgery. You can if you want, but you don't feel like you have to get plastic surgery so you can look better than other people. You don't have to be afraid because you're no longer on top. You don't need to be the best. You can
Right.
just be. This doesn't feel like that.
No, and the throwback to the Eisenhower years, I feel like is so intentional. And again, I think we're connecting it to the rise of the use of like wartime propaganda during peacetime. So one of the ways in which I think older generations really have a picture of the world is the literal map that they used in schools and they stared at and they memorized, and it's called the Mercator projection. And it was developed way back centuries ago, but I think it had such kind of staying power because, especially in the 20th century, because it made Russia look so big. It makes Greenland look as big as Africa.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
crazy how much, but it served the purpose of, and I'm not saying it was intended to do this, but it seems to have served the purpose for many of like making the Soviet Union look so formidable and scary. It served the Cold War.
Yeah.
What's called the Gall-Peters projection is just shocking looking at that. So
Well, and this is sort of like, I think of the question now, who's the enemy? Does the Western world need to feel like it is the victim of an enemy to exist, to have justification? Maybe we need to say some of the things that get thrown at people, like, don't be a victim, don't be so dramatic. It's
right.
basically, it's fine.
Well,
Calm
I
down.
think, yeah. And we touched on this in an earlier video about 9/11 and the role of fear.
Yes, we did.
Suddenly the US had another enemy. It was
Right.
the Islamic world. So again, I think, I know we mentioned this in one of our last videos, but it's worth kind of recapping how like portraying the enemy now drives people into also an image of themselves that is part of the idolatry and part of inhabiting the idolatry. At one point, it was The Axis of Evil by George W. Bush. Who's that? It's Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. And then it was like the war on terror and terrorists everywhere, terrorists in our midst. And then it's Antifa. And then it's Marxists and the radical left. And then it's groomers who are coming for your children. Even though, like, there's plenty of men in your own camp who come for children.
In the
And then,
churches.
yeah, in churches, in
Yeah.
private schools and whatnot. And then there's like immigrants who are coming for your jobs.
I participated in the UFW's Take Our Jobs campaign, one of only 16 people in America to take up the challenge. But this is America. I don't want a tomato picked by a Mexican. I want it picked by an American, then sliced by a Guatemalan, and served by a Venezuelan in a spa where a Chilean gives me a Brazilian.
Everywhere, it's just like the fear that's stoked to drive people into the participation of the idol, right? And to reflect back to yourself like, oh, this is who we are. This is who we want to be or should be.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's this letter to the editor that I've been trying to track down where it's come from. And it's about the useful idiots of the world and saying, beware of the useful idiots, because this is Saul Alinsky simplifying Lenin's scheme for world conquest under communism. And here are the things we need to be afraid of. Healthcare. When you control healthcare, you control the people. So watch out for the government doing that, because they're so good at making government healthcare for all of us so we don't have to go bankrupt in medical bankruptcy. That's not happening. Kind of wish it would. Kind of wish that would happen, actually, because I would like to pay less for healthcare. Poverty, increase the poverty levels high as possible. Conservatives are pretty good about not caring about poor people. Debt, increase the debt to an unsustainable level. Another thing that conservatives do really, really well, and, you know, like boomers getting their own kids and student loan debt because college was, you know, like $3 when they went. It's incredibly expensive now. Gun control, remove the ability to defend themselves from the government. That way you're able to create a police state. The police are more militarized than ever. Everybody's got an AR-15. This is a bad idea. Like we don't need, I would like fewer guns, please. Welfare, take control of every aspect of their lives, food, housing, and income. Capitalism's doing a great job of taking control of food because you can't afford it, and housing because BlackRock and private equity is buying it all, and income, wages are down, and now, you know, labor is trying to organize for that. Education, take control of what people read and listen to, and take control of what children learn in school. Conservatives are really good at doing that.
Like they're not doing that. That very
They're totally
thing.
doing that. They're doing exactly that. Class warfare, divide the people into the wealthy and the poor. They're doing that. Income inequality. CEOs are making tons of money for doing barely nothing. They've got mega yachts, and the people who are doing the actual work, including child labor that we've talked about before, it's just going up and up and up. They're doing a great job at class warfare. Who's a useful idiot?
Oh my gosh. And all that just to push more people into the system as cheap labor, right? And or as desperate consumers who are trying to scrape by. And they get upset when other people call it out. So the weird thing is just how much people get upset when you kind of push on their image of the world, because that's what they've been buying and kind of nurturing themselves with as they participate in the idolatry. And so one of the books I came across recently is called Underground Empire: How America Weaponized the World Economy. It's not a Christian book, but it makes us reflect very seriously about what is it that we're doing from an economic standpoint. And so, you know, it's kind of the economic version of the military, the US military, like, for example, arming Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden so that he could fight the Soviet Union, right, in Afghanistan. Well, yes, that's the military version. We get blowback from that. But there's an economic version of that.
The economic aspects of the sanctions against Russia, the ways in which the United States is using semiconductors to try to strangle China's ability to engage in certain kinds of military AI. All of these represent ways in which these global networks that were supposed to hold the world together, were supposed to make it harmonious, have become instead the vectors of power and the vectors of coercion. They have spread coercion, and they have been means which have been used by powerful governments in order to achieve, by different means, in order to achieve their strategic objectives, and in order very often to weaken their enemies. So this is a different world than the world that we expected that we were in.
We're seeing a lot of use of AI in warfare, like the modern state of Israel is using AI against the Palestinians in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're selling that technology to other countries.
Mm.
So is there going to be some kind of blowback, maybe not directly at Israel, but it will be used all over the place.
Right.
You know, we develop these technologies, other people try to develop those technologies too, of what, mass surveillance, as we've been talking about, or financialization. And then it becomes about the control of those technologies. And so this book is talking about how economics and technological development has always been really an aspect of geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I find really refreshing but also sobering, because we have weaponized the world economy, as they put it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that kind of goes up against our image of like United States is just sort of like this helpless victim of the Soviet Union and of the axis of evil and of the immigrants and of the groomers and out of
Right.
Antifa and of the war on terror. We're just sitting here like, guys, please don't hurt us anymore. We have a giant military and we'll hurt you, but please don't hurt us anymore. And then Americans want to feel special and be nostalgic about the 1950s. When
Right.
somehow that was better. And then they see someone like Trump and they're like, well, he talks really tough and I want to feel tough. It's all about the messaging and the marketing and the propaganda, and it's not about truth. What feels really discouraging to me is that today we have new marketing messages from hard right, fascist, separatists who are trying to have a revolution. They want a civil war. They want a balkanization of America at best. And
You mean Elon Musk?
and a sea to shining sea revolution at worst.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that. Idaho, Oregon area, tons of
white supremacists are moving there.
Yes. And whether they achieve separation and build a little empire or overcome the entire country with hatred, whoever is left is going to lose. And this is a natural end of the plantation's desire. Hoarding, scraping, raping people and planet for the benefit of a few.
Well, if you can't make the whole country your plantation, just make us 2 states. So
take a couple.
Yeah. So I just want to, recap here for our listeners that what we've been talking about is idolatry, dominion, and the marketing of the plantation system. Idolatry is happening not like in ancient times, but in a new way where we're drawn into, we're kind of sucked into by other people, perhaps by the elites, into inhabiting the idol, the idolatry, and then projecting an image back to other people so that they also do what the elites want us to do. And a lot of it has to do with like self-image and collective self-image.
Right.
It just strikes me that the Bible does not do this at all. Just 2 real quick scriptures that highlight a pattern. It shows that the Bible does not use a hermeneutics of nostalgia. So one is Deuteronomy, where Moses says, it's certain that you guys, the Israelites, are all going to go into exile. Like that's not the end. God will restore you and others from exile. But like this whole period of time of being the chosen people, and what I like to call kind of this, in some ways, a medical focus group that's trying to internalize the demanding health regimen of a good doctor who wants people to get well, they're going to fail. Right. And it's right there. It's right up front. You're going to fail. God is going to have to intervene in a different way. Right. And then Psalm 106 is one of those Psalms and one of those places in Scripture that is a litany of the failures of the Israelites. It just says over and over, both we and our ancestors have sinned. We have committed iniquity, have done wickedly, and then lists them out. They do this not because they just want to beat themselves up, but because they want to have a realistic, truthful understanding of themselves, of the human condition, and of what God is going to have to do in Christ to heal it to transform it and restore us and the creation to the world that he always intended. So one of the things that is key is being able to tell the truth about oneself and the collective that you're part of, that, dare I say, the nation that you're part of.
Right, right. We don't have a hermeneutic of nostalgia.
Nope.
We are not able to time travel. We are not able to pause time. Time goes forward. Always. And so do we. We must go forward.
Right. Well, and that's a great segue to next time, because what does the Bible call us to but hope? But there are false hopes too. And so we'll take a look at that next time.
Right. Thanks for joining us today. Join us next time for part 2 of Dominion, Idolatry, and the Marketing of the Plantation System.